we rolling? Are we live? Is it 10? I think it must be gone 12:30, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, everybody. Welcome to this press conference by the Ipcc on the 43rd session of the Ipcc, which took place here in Nairobi at UN headquarters over the last 3 days. I'm very pleased to welcome both journalists from Nairobi and also journalists and others following us through the live webcast of this session, which will be recorded and put on our website afterwards. We'll be taking questions obviously from the journalists in the room, but for those of you who are following the webcast, if you email questions to ipcc-questions@wmo.int, we will get them and we'll feed those into the press conference too. So today we have with us from my right Deborah Roberts, who is one of the co-chairs of IPCC Working Group 2, which deals with impacts, adaptation and vulnerability of climate change. Next to her is Hui-Sung Lee, who is the chair of the IPCC. Next to him is Yuba Sokana, who is one of the 3 vice chairs of the IPCC. And next to him is Manava Shivakumar, who is the acting secretary of the IPCC. So we'll start this press conference with a short introduction from Dr. Lee, and then we'll be open to questions. So Hui-Sung, the floor is yours. And please switch on the,
Thank you, John. Thank you, Jonathan. Good afternoon and welcome to this IPCC press conference. We have spent the last 3 days for the IPCC 43rd plenary, which was very productive in terms of mapping our activity for the AR6 cycle. Today, members of the IPCC leadership are meeting to follow up some of those decisions so that we can get things moving right away. I'm very pleased to say that we accomplished all what we set out to do in those last 3 days. We now have a roadmap for our next comprehensive assessment, which will be released in stages, finishing with a synthesis report in 2022 in good time for the global stocktake that nations will undertake in 2023 under the Climate Convention. We have also agreed to produce 3 special reports before the full AR6 appears. Firstly, we have responded positively to the request from the UNFCCC to provide a special report in 2018 on the impacts of global warming of 1.5 degrees C above pre-industrial levels and related global greenhouse gas emissions pathways. Secondly, we have agreed to provide a special report on issues around climate change and land, specifically desertification, land degradation, sustainable land management, food security, and greenhouse gas fluxes in terrestrial ecosystems, and a special report on climate change, oceans, and the cryosphere. This will comprise 3 special reports. These 2 special reports, in addition to the 1.5 degrees C special report, will be produced as early as possible in the AR6 cycle. And the detailed outlines of these all 3, including one on 1.5 degrees C, will be developed in what we call the scoping process over the coming month. We agreed to pay special attention in the scoping process for AR6 to the impacts of climate change on cities and their unique adaptation and mitigation opportunities. We will also consider organizing an international scientific conference with others on climate change and cities early in the AR6 cycle, and the next cycle also for AR7 will include a special report on climate change and cities. We will update the methodologies and that countries use to measure and report their national greenhouse gas inventories. We reached an agreement with UNEP to develop a library facilities for Ipcc authors, giving them access to relevant journals and publications at no cost to them. This will be particularly useful to authors from developing countries. Among the many other agenda items we discussed, we agreed to update our communication strategy over the next few months and took some steps already as we start work on the new reports. We decided to work closely with stakeholders in the scoping process and to provide communications specialists in the preparation of reports, especially for summary for policymakers, so that they will be clearer and more accessible and relevant to other users, to our users. Let me say a few words about the special report on 1.5 degrees, the wide interest in this topic. As you know, before the meeting of the Climate Convention in Paris last year, COP21, the governments were focusing on limiting global warming to a rise of 2 degrees. Our last assessment showed that some serious risks, for example, affecting coral and potentially sea level rise, emerge already at 1.5 degrees. However, there was not much scientific research available on this topic, and so we're not able to say very much about that in our last assessment, AR5. Therefore, although there is much we find out, there's a lot we need to find about the scientific aspect of 1.5, but there are many more scientific understanding that we need to develop regarding this 1.5 degrees C. We are ready to embark on this special report on 1.5 degrees C, and we are very hopeful that this special report will be a very important scientific inputs for a facilitative dialogue that UNFFCCC contemplates that will take place in 2018. With that, I would please to take your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hui Sung. Now, are there any questions from the reporters in the room? Come on, don't be shy. Yeah, thank you, the lady in the fourth row. Yeah. Could you also say who you are and who you represent? Thank you.
Hi. Hello, you can hear me? My name is Zainab Wandati. I'm a journalist from Nairobi. I have a few questions. The COP21 borrowed heavily on the AR5, and hence the reason the agreement was adopted and the 1.5 limit was set in the agreement. But there's been a feeling among several people who've assessed the agreement itself, who say that it is not binding in the sense that even though it sets out what the countries should do and the reports that they should be bringing in all frequently, it doesn't set penalties for what the global community will take should these countries fail to meet their targets, thereby sort of defeating the purpose of the agreement in the first place. What are your opinions on that? What are your views on that? And secondly, I'd like to know, how are the various domestic processes in these different countries going to affect the timelines of the countries signing up to the agreement next week?
The AR5, the fifth assessment report, tremendously contributed to the critical decisions of the Paris Agreement. And we are very proud of that, the achievement of Ipcc as a whole was able to contribute to the success of the Climate Convention. And we hope that the AR6 will again contribute to such success for the implementation of Paris Agreement. And that is the reason why we spent for the last 3 days in mapping our activities for the AR6. For other aspects of our activities, our Vice Chair, Yuba Sokona, and Deborah Roberts from the Working Group 2 are happy to answer your questions.
Could I just add that next week more than 130 countries will sign the Paris Agreement. That's the biggest number of countries ever to sign any international agreement, and that's being signed at the head of state, head of government or foreign minister level. So there's a huge political commitment to that agreement, and that countries have agreed as part of the agreement to review the progress we're making to the goals in it, to see whether the efforts are sufficient. Okay. And that will be done every 5 years under a process known as the global stocktake, the first of those happening in 2023. Yeah.
Just to build on Jonathan's input, a key pillar of the Paris Agreement is the article on transparency. So parties committed to make obvious to the international community what their actions were so that that effectiveness could be assessed. And that's really the role of the IPCC, is not to make commentary on country actions, whether they're effective or not, but really to use that opportunity of transparency to look at that information, draw it into the scientific assessment process, which we will certainly do through both the main assessment report and the 1.5 report, to provide a scientific feedback on effectiveness. So I think look to that pillar of transparency as a critical anchoring element in terms of moving the Paris Agreement forward in a positive way.
Yeah, Yuba, please.
Our fifth assessment report findings indicated clearly if we want to keep the temperature to 2 degrees above the pre-industrial period by the end of this century, and then we need to decarbonize the energy, the economy through the decarbonization of the energy systems. And this has been very well kept by in Paris, and that has been translated by the action the country are taken. And then the details of that depend on negotiation, and this is beyond the IPCC mandate.
Thank you, Yuba. Any further questions in the room? And a reminder that you can email questions to us if you're following the webcast on ipcc-questions@wmo.int. I think there's one just coming in. Thank you. This is from Megan Darby of Climate Home, I think. 2 questions from Megan. How much do you expect or want scientists to produce new research for the 1.5 degree special report? And secondly, does a focus on 1.5 degrees mitigation pathways risk distracting from more pragmatic work, such as removing barriers to carbon pricing, as some scientists have argued?
It is quite clear to say anything about the specific contents that we contemplate on the special report on 1.5. The working group that will produce that 1.5 special report will have a scoping meeting. It's specifically designed to produce the outline and the detailed plan for assessment for the special report. And with that information, we will be able to say a much more firm and much more specific information, scientific information about this 1.5 degrees C special report.
I think what is important to realize about the Paris Agreement is it sent out a number of global messages to different communities. So certainly when we look to Article 2, the commentary around the temperature goals sent out a very strong message to the scientific community. And already we see that the scientific community is itself hosting a number of meetings and conferences focused on the issue of 1.5. So I think to the first question, are we hoping to see new scientific research related to 1.5? I think the scientific community is already mobilizing in the wake of the Paris Agreement and is standing ready to comment and input into the scoping process that Husangli described for you.
Yeah, since Paris, we have seen a great interest of many scientists looking at the 1.5 degree. on various aspects, and our role is to make an assessment of those findings without prejudging what will be the outcome, and then is to do that, the assessment based on those publications.
Does anybody want to comment on Megan's second question, which was, does a focus on the 1.5 degree or 1.5 degree mitigation pathways risk distracting from other work, such as removing barriers to carbon pricing? Do you want to comment on that, Hui-sung?
I indicated we cannot prejudge the outcome of the findings, and then that will depend what literature will be available, and then how those questions will be also in the scoping among different authors. And then our role is to assess the existing literature, and then we cannot respond to any such question before carrying out the assessment.
Exactly. The carbon price that just mentioned, it is a very important element among the policy measures, but that's not the only policy measures that we keep attention. And we are not in the position of advocating any one specific policy measures. We will assess based upon the latest available scientific literature with regard to the various policy alternatives that policymakers would like to consider.
Thank you. Any further questions in the room? Yeah, the lady in the second row.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah. I'm Laura Heaton. I'm an independent journalist based here in Nairobi. I wonder if you might comment on how all of the energy and the attention that COP21 generated towards this focus on climate change right now, apart from the people who are always focusing on this issue, the new public attention that conference provided. I wonder if you might talk about how that has affected your work and also helped direct the focus of the sixth assessment.
Communications, outreach and improving our communications activity are very, very important element of Ipcc activities, as you are very well aware. And in fact, one of the decisions this panel approved throughout the last 3 days is just about exactly that, how to improve the communications strategies. And as I mentioned very briefly at the introductory remarks, we are going to involve the communications experts right from the beginning of our assessment process, so that the end product of our Ipcc reports will be much more accessible and readable to not only the policymakers but also to the general audiences. I believe that Jonathan Lind would like to put further details on this aspect, please.
Thank you, Hui-sung. Well, one of the things we've done, as well as publishing the report and presenting it at a press conference, is over the past year or so, we've been, my colleagues here and other Ipcc scientists have been traveling all over the world presenting the report to not only to policymakers, people in government, but to civil society organizations, students, and really giving them the chance to get to grips with the material, and also encouraging young scientists to get involved in the future work of the Ipcc. And we'll be continuing to do that even as we start to develop the new reports. We'll be continuing to present the existing findings. I have a question from Alistair Doyle of Reuters. Will the Ipcc shift in the 2020s to a shorter 5-year cycle for its reports to fit in with the cycle of revisions under the Paris Agreement, with the global stocktake starting from 2023? Would that shorter deadline be a problem?
Our synthesis report will be released during the next coming cycle, then 2022, which will be on time for the global stocktake the Untitled is considering. And then we are also very much in recognition of the need for that 5-year cycle that is contemplated by the UNFFC. And normally, as the AR6 cycle comes to the latter part of our activity schedule, IPCC panel will consider the future of IPCC activity and aligning our assessment cycle with this 5-year cycle by UNFCCC will clearly be one of the items that the panel will consider.
Thank you. I have a question now from Daniel Cressy of Nature. Can you provide some detail on how you will update the methodologies that countries use to measure and report their national greenhouse gas inventories? What might change and how might this impact on what we know about emissions?
The panel decided yesterday that we will produce a update on methodology reports, and that will reflect the advancement in the science and also technical factors related to the national greenhouse gas inventory methodologies. And we will produce that report 2019?
I think it was 2019, yes.
2019. That report will be available in 2019 so that the parties of the UNFCCCs will get benefit from that report.
Thank you. Any questions in the room? I have a question from Urmi Goswami of the Economic Times in India, or 2 questions in fact. Can you give us a sense of what the special report on 1.5 degrees seeks to achieve? And secondly, what kind of input will the IPCC provide for the 2018 review? I think in a way those are one and the same question, but Wei-Sung. Yeah. Do you want to comment any?
Well, I think the same, again, we are not at this moment in the position of precisely indicating what sort of information, messages we wish to deliver on this 1.5 degrees C special report, which is a very important special report. We will be able to say something more in detail after we agree on a detailed, specific, the scoping of that 1.5 degrees C special report.
Any further questions in the room? Any further questions? Oh yeah, one just coming in from the ether. This is from Rahana Dada, freelance. For the next assessment report, does the IPCC intend to support from regions or countries where there's still not enough information available about impacts and functioning of natural systems, etc.? If so, how, particularly with regards to adaptation?
The increasing the participation of developing country scientists has always been the top priority in the IPCC activities. And in fact, in AR6, our Bureau members have a great deal of interest in realizing, in making it the realization that the participation of developing countries will really will be enhanced during this process. And it is very important that the developing country scientists do their scientific work and get them published in a scientific literature so that IPCC lead author group will be able to assess those precious information. And at the same time, it is very important that developing country scientists will be more involved in this assessment process as lead author, a contributing author, and a reviewer in this process. I believe that it is very important that for the quality of AR6, participation of developing country scientists is more important than ever. Perhaps my colleague, Yuba Sokonat, should add to this point.
And Shiv, do you want to say something? Yeah.
Thank you. In addition to what the chair, Dr. Lee, has mentioned, in the IPCC Secretariat, we have organized in February a meeting inviting all the diplomatic missions from developing countries in Geneva, and we briefed them about the importance of the participation of experts from developing countries in the preparation of the IPCC reports. And we had more than 50 countries who attended the meeting, and they really appreciated the briefing that we provided, and they requested that we provide such briefings almost once in a year so that they can then go back to their governments and then ensure that the right kind of experts are nominated for the preparation of the report. So from the Secretariat, certainly because we are based in Geneva, and it's a very good place to be because there are lots of diplomatic missions in Geneva, we will continue to provide this information, and we do hope that developing countries will come forward with the nomination of experts. Thank you.
As indicated by the chair, this is an issue where IPCC is conscious and then want to increase. And then based on the awareness on that issue, we have seen since the publication of AR6 that number of universities in industrialized countries are partnering with universities and institutions, particularly in the African context, and then to increase the quality and the number of publications and issues that are pertinent for the region, pertinent for the issues, and then that will also feed the AR6.
At this point, I may want to highlight the fact that I said it already before. In this cycle, the UNEP will provide a library facility so that all authors from the developing countries, especially for developing countries, can have full access to the journals available to the assessment of the IPCC activity, which is a very remarkable facility available to the lead authors in this cycle.
Deborah?
I just wanted to add to that and say that this is a particular issue that concerns the co-chairs. And as a result, in terms of the position of the various working groups, there's been a tension in the organization of the technical support that goes to the co-chairs to place an emphasis on supporting the co-chairs that are based in the Global South in a meaningful way, so that we're able to reach out meaningfully into our regions to locate the scientists and the capacity that exists. And if you look at the spread of the chairs in the Global South, we cover China, India, and Africa. So that's a very good anchor to enable us to reach out more effectively into our regions, to find the right kind of institutions and people to participate and bring those views into this particularly important assessment process.
Thank you, Deborah. A follow-up question from Daniel Cressy of Nature. Can you comment on whether there will be consideration of geoengineering in the work on the 1.5 degree report?
Again, that this is about the specifics of a special report on 1.5, and therefore we have a very limited space to comment on that. But with regard to geoengineering, AR5 assessment, during the AR5, the Working Group 3 had a very specific comment on the geoengineering. It says that it has a number of aspects to be considered, and it clearly indicates that a further scientific assessment is needed regarding the geoengineering.
Thanks, Hui-Sung. We have about 10 minutes left. Any questions in the room? I have a follow-up from Urmi Goswami of the Economic Times of India. What kind of involvement will the IPCC have in the process of drawing up a robust transparency mechanism under the Paris Agreement?
That part of the question was also answered a few minutes ago, and part of our task is to provide an update on methodology report, which will be available in 2019. And we hope that that update will be facilitative documents to the UNFCCC, the goal of improving transparency of the Paris Agreement.
Any questions in the room? I have a question from Mustafa Khan. how will the research outputs from the various bilateral development projects be taken up in the special report on oceans and cryosphere? So the various bilateral development projects, so research outputs that come from bilateral projects, how would they be taken up in the report on oceans and cryosphere?
That the degree of inclusion of such projects will depend upon the degree of publications available through a peer-reviewed process. And IPCC, again, is a scientific body based upon the availability and based upon the scientific journals, based upon the peer review process.
Thank you. Any more questions in the room? There's one just coming in from over there, so we'll pause for thought for a minute. This is from Dr. Brigitte Knopf of the Mercator Research Institute. So 1.5 degrees might mean using large amounts of negative emissions and with it huge amounts of biomass. This has impacts on land use. Will there be links in that respect between the 1.5 special report and the one on land?
Negative emissions was also mentioned very clearly in the AR5, especially if you look at the Working Group 3 reports dealing with the scenarios, various scenarios, which is based upon the analysis of 1,200 scenarios. And there it clearly indicates that if we delay our action, then we should be prepared to adopt some sort of negative emissions technologies, which will be at this moment look quite costly, and also at this moment is unproven technologies. And that was the sort of conclusion that AR5 indicates about the negative negative emission technologies, but it also indicates that there is a considerable need for the scientific assessment, scientific research on this point, and definitely assessment on that the negative emission technologies will be one important item that the current cycle of assessment will address.
Thank you. Any further questions in the room? I think I can see just a minute, a follow-up question. So this is a follow-up question from Rahana Dada. Has there been any further thought given to accessing traditional knowledge that is not in the traditional scientific sphere for inclusion in AR6?
The desire to expand our information base and also base that can serve our desire to improve our understanding of the climate science impacts, vulnerability, and response measures is still a very important element in our current assessment cycles. We will try to achieve our attempt to be inclusive, not only in terms of the scientists that will do the assessment, but also at the same time the information base that we need to deal with. But the important point is that, again, we are dealing with a scientific assessment. Therefore, the information that we are going to assess has to be through the process of peer-reviewed, this golden standard of scientific assessment.
Yuba?
I just want to add on that during this cycle of the FIFA assessment report, Ipcc partnered with a number of organizations and then to organize a workshop dealing precisely with the knowledge, the traditional knowledge, and then how that can be available and improved to be be assessed in the report. And we organize in Australia on adaptation and climate change and local knowledge. We organize also on the mitigation and local knowledge, and we also organize workshop with on the same topic with UNESCO, and a number of publications came out of those different activities, and then that inform the AR5 on adaptation as well as on mitigation.
Yeah, thanks. Deborah?
And just building on Yoba's input, I think it's important this early in the cycle to note the decision taken yesterday to commit to a scientific conference on cities, which will draw on a broad range of participants, amongst which will be urban practitioners, to gain those local insights into informing our thinking on this important issue. So again, I think we're finding a number of unique ways to be engaging, to draw in this new information in a way that the IPCC can consider it in its important assessment processes.
Thanks, Deborah. I'm afraid we're out of time now, and I know a few questions have come in just now, but there'll be other opportunities to talk to you in the coming months. So thank you very much for following this press conference, and the recording will be available on the IPCC website or on our YouTube channel. So thank you very much.